But Rita, we had some more demonstrations in Melbourne yesterday.
Yes, and it got quite violent. There were arrests made. There were women who wanted to speak. It was another Let Women Speak type event. And of course, the trans activists turned up. They didn't want women to speak, and they tried to break through the police lines. The fact that we have to have police lines to protect women, talking about women's rights, is a problem in itself in this city. And the police have actually come out now. They had to use pepper spray. They had to make arrests. There's footage of all sorts of unrest and violence. And they've said they want these protesters to get a permit because they are wasting so much resources policing these people. Let's have a look at some of the scenes from yesterday. Ron, they've said since October 8, 7,500 police shifts have been needed to cover protests, more than 300 protests, mainly around the Middle Eastern conflict. We know the pro-Palestinian protesters are out there just about every weekend, but also women wanting to speak. So, and you've got the climate change nutters who are blocking roads and freeways. So at the moment, we're allowing this small group of agitators to cause enormous disruption, waste police resources, and there doesn't seem to be much accountability for most of it.
And of course, they sound like very separate matters, the transgender story, climate change, etc., but behind all these protests...
It's the same one.
It's the same mob. It's the cultural Marxists, James, at work, doing everything to tear apart our society, tear apart the institutions that we value and have kept us safe, tear apart the values and destroy and trample all over the values of family and the values that have held our society and made it so successful. They're at their work every weekend. There you go, James.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, that's very well put, Rowan. But to that I would add is that what we're seeing here, with all of these protesters is this is kind of what happens where, you get sort of out of control with this idea of, sort of what you would call liberalism. And then you sort of take it out to these extremes. And then you wind up in this sort of state of where we're in now, which is really constant revolution. So there is an actual direct line link here between these protesters here who want to tell you that gender doesn't exist, that a man can have a baby, that your children, your teenage children can decide that they want to identify as something else and change their gender as they're now allowed to do in the ACT, and people who say that, oh, well, we are standing up for Palestine and not for Israel, and essentially providing aid and comfort morally to Hamas, which committed all sorts of dreadful murders and rapes and wants to continue committing dreadful murders and rapes, and all of these other issues right down to climate change, because, of course, climate change, that's about cutting us off at the knees with our industrial society and our economy. And all of these things kind of come together in this sort of big stew, because what's happened here is that, the left used to dream, Rowan and Rita, they used to dream of controlling the means of production in the factories and all of that sort of stuff. And now they've decided, well, we can't do that because that never worked. So now we're going to control what you think and up here, and we're going to undermine all the foundations that support those things, whether it's the family, whether it's the morality of a foreign policy that knows who the good guys are and who the bad guys are, or, it's about the economy and where our jobs come from. And it all winds up ultimately in the same place: chaos, revolution, dysfunction. This is where we're going, guys, and this is why all of these different protest movements all should be seen as part of the same philosophical sewer.
Absolutely. Cultural Marxism. We'll be talking to Bella about that shortly.